Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. I am Bolaji Akinwale. Coming up today, Doha oil meeting ends in a stalemate. Britain risks losing national income by 6% by 2030 if the UK leaves the European Union. Plus, world leaders say they are committed to global economic growth. We will begin with the Doha meeting where world's leading oil exporters over the weekend met to discuss capping production, which ended without agreement. After hours of talks in Qatar, the country's energy minister, Mohammed bin Saleh Al Sadar, said that the oil producers need more time. Most members of the OPEC producers group, plus other oil exporters, including Russia, attended the talks. They wanted a deal that would freeze output and help stem the plunge in crude prices over the past 18 months. Oil prices stumbled in Asian trade as a result, with the prices of both US and London crude down by more than 5%. Now, talks hit difficulties over tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia as Iran did not attend the meeting. Now, talking about the impact of the stalemate on crude oil markets, we're seeing prices dropping sharply after a meeting of the oil producers, of course, which failed to agree a cap on output. Brent crude fell 7% at one point, but then recovered slightly to stand down $1.87 at $41.23 a barrel. The meeting in Qatar was attended by most members of oil producers group OPEC, including Saudi Arabia, but not Iran. Now, Saudi Arabia, the world's biggest exporter, had been prepared to freeze output if all OPEC members had agreed. And Britain's national income could be 6% smaller by 2030 if the UK leaves the European Union. According to a Treasury analysis in the country, the size of the cut and gross domestic product will be the equivalent of about £4,300 a year for every household. Trade barriers will be higher, hitting exports, and investments will be lower both within the UK and from abroad after an EU exit. Now, Vote Leave dismissed it as erroneous. Many believe that businesses will move at least part of their operations to the continent of Europe to be within the EU single market. Borrowing costs for the government could also rise as investors demand higher repayments for supporting the UK's debts as the economy weakens. And trading is ongoing at the European stock markets. Let's bring in Conrad Busen, DWTV Channels TV correspondent, who is joining me live from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Hello, Conrad. Welcome to the program. Now, the slump of the oil price after the failed meeting of OPEC members and Russia and Doha is having a negative effect on share prices. How bad is it in Frankfurt?
I have to say the mood has changed somewhat today from very bad at the beginning of stock trading here in Frankfurt this morning to not so bad anymore at the moment in afternoon trading. Traders I talked to reminded me of the positive impact it has when the price of oil, when the price of petrol remains low. Businesses here in Germany, automakers, chemicals makers, also more consumer-oriented companies like it when petrol remains cheap here. But there's more to this. We've seen during several months now a very close relation to share prices, also here in Frankfurt, and the development of the oil price. And that, the reason behind this had very much to do with banks, American banks that is, has grown enormously during a couple of years, and much of this growth was driven by debt, fueled by loans. Now, with the decline of the oil price recently, many investors have been concerned that banks could get in trouble because of oil producers becoming insolvent, because of loans going bust. But now, with the bank earnings reports we've seen during the recent week and also today from Morgan Stanley, it shows that yes, some of the problems have been there during the first quarter, but they are not as enormously big. And this is one sign that makes many investors believe that there's going to be a decoupling of the oil price and the development of the share price. And that would explain why today the shares are standing there, at least here in Europe, not so bad, while the decline of the oil price after this Doha meeting is quite obvious. The oil price for oil from the North Sea here at the moment is down around about 3%.
Now, shares in the Brazilian state oil company Petrobras are up 9%. What's behind that?
These are really domestic topics from Brazil. You know, since the beginning of April, more or less, shares in Petrobras have been very much in demand, and this has to do with the speculation that Dilma Rousseff, the president of Brazil, might have to go. You know, there are many demonstrations in the city of Brazil now. There has been an impeachment process introduced against her, and less power of the Labour Party on the top of Brazil means less political influence in Petrobras. That's the equation that a trader explained to me. Petrobras is still by 50% right about owned by the Brazilian government, and if Dilma Rousseff has to go, it's likely that there's going to be less state influence, maybe less corruption at Petrobras, at least more of a market and profit-oriented development at Petrobras. And that's why shares are in demand and investors are going for it.
Now, Conrad, last week, surprisingly, strong economic data from China inspired stock markets. Today, we're seeing the contrary. Tell us more.
Yes, remember how surprising that data was last week when it was reported from China that, you know, the retail sector, exports, industrial production had been much stronger in March than economists had anticipated. Now the data is much less inspiring. China reported that it had revised downwards the GDP, the gross domestic product, the growth numbers, economic growth numbers for 3 of the quarters of 2015. And that has reignited the discussion here about the data quality coming in from China. You know, there's been a lot of discussion whether the data can be trusted, since China as a whole is so much influenced by the government. There's been rumors that the government might be inclined to manipulate its own data. Now the government says, well, the growth in China last year was actually lower than we originally had anticipated. So, of course, obviously, people here are discussing about what they can trust in terms of China. And that's news sort of, you know, scaring off investors.
Many thanks, Conrad. Thank you so much for your time. We'll go on a break now, and when we come back, we'll bring you more on the program. Please stay with us.